Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1941 war comedy directed by Steven Spielberg titled 1941. The script was also written by Robert Zemeckis, David Gale, and John Milius, and it was produced by Buzz Feitshans. The score was done by John Williams. The cinematography was done by William Froker, the editing was done by Michael Kahn, and it was distributed by Universal Pictures. The stars of the movie include Dan Aykroyd, Ned Beatty, John Belushi, Christopher Lee, Robert Stack, Slim Pickens, Robert Stack, John Candy, Joe Flaherty, and the film debut of Mickey Rourke. The synopsis goes a little something like this. It's loosely based on the aftermath of the attack of Pearl Harbor by the Americans, in which the entire city of Los Angeles was under the fear that the Japanese will fight back. The opening scene features a young lady swimming off the coast of California when suddenly a Japanese submarine surfaces beneath her. Later that morning, the 10 Armored Division, consisting of Sergeant Frank Tree, Corporal Chuck Satarsky, and Privates Foley and Reese and Henshaw, are at the diner where Wally Stevens works. Wally has aspirations to dance with Betty Douglas for a contest, much to the chagrin of her father, Ward. Satarsky hates Wally and gets into a fight with Wally, which results in Wally losing his job. Wally and his friend Dennis eventually go shopping. While they go shopping, they steal a zoot suit. Meanwhile, in Death Valley, Air Corps Captain Wild Bill Kelso, played by the late John Belushi, lands his Curtis P-40 near a grocery store and a gas station. Kelso inadvertently blows up the station. To calm matters down in the city of Los Angeles, Major General Joseph Stilwell is at a press conference in Long Beach, as Captain Loomis Burkhead is attracted to his secretary, because his secretary, Donna Stratton, because of her fondness for planes. When she rebuffs to date him, she knocks him out and he accidentally falls on a bomb release control. Just as the general guarantees there will be no bombs dropped here, it explodes, and however Stilwell escapes. At the Douglas family home, Wally was told he can't take Betty to the USO dance because only servicemen are allowed to enter. Sergeant Tree and his crew bring an anti-aircraft battery. Satarsky eventually asks Betty to the dance when Wally eventually falls on him. Ward and Satarsky dump him in a garbage truck. The Japanese sub tries to find Los Angeles when the compass is broken. They thought they found Hollywood, but they only caught Hollis Hollywood, played brilliantly by Slim Pickens. They see he has a crackerjack compass, but eventually he ends up swallowing it. That evening, Stilwell goes to see the movie premiere of Dumbo, while Loomis and Donna are at the bomb disbursement, where Colonel Maddox, convinced that the Japanese are sending troops to Pomona, gladly gives the plane to Burkhead and Donna. Outside USO, Satarsky and Wally once again engage into a fight and takes Betty to the dance. Wally eventually goes incognito as a shore patrolman. He steals away Betty, and they eventually win the contest. Outraged, Zdarsky punches Wally, and a brawl breaks out between the sailors and the soldiers. Sergeant Shree arrives on the scene to LA, where a red alert of an unknown aircraft is in the air. Burkhead and Donna cause the anti-aircraft to open fire. Kelso shoots the plane and it lands on the Labrator Pit, I believe it was called. Kelso sees the submarine was shot down by his two spotters who were on the Ferris wheel, who mistake his plane for a Japanese fighter. Zdarsky, while he's making love to Betty, only to get knocked out by Wally. Wally takes charge of Tree's tank and heads to the amusement park. Ward fires at the sub, which damages his house. The sub fires back, reeling the Ferris wheel into the ocean. The tank sinks as the pier collapses. Kelso gets caught by the Japanese as he drives his motorbike into the ocean. The next day, at the remains of the Douglas home, where Ward declares Christmas will not be ruined, he nails a wreath to his front door, which jars the house so that it collapses and falls into the ocean, and Stillwell breathes out, "It's gonna be a long war," as it ends with everyone starting to argue and fight with each other. What did I think of this movie? If you're a big fan of war-themed comedies like Kelly's Heroes, MASH, and sitcoms like Hogan's Heroes didn't tickle your funny bone, maybe Steven Spielberg has the key to find your sense of humor. When it came out in 1979, 1941 was custom made for fans who want to avoid subtle comedy and love their comedy to be loud, punchy, and over the top. Sadly, this movie failed at the box office, but when I got the DVD, I actually enjoyed it. Not like in a life-changing perspective, but sort of like a guilty pleasure. Did you know that there was actually once a rumor that before Robert Stack of Elliot Ness of the Untouchables fame and also the long-going host of the TV series Unsolved Mysteries took the role of General Stillwell, dramatic actors like John Wayne and Charlton Heston were considered for the part, but they rebuffed at the request because of their military background, and they thought that the movie was irreverent to the real Pearl Harbor incident. However, the setting of the story is real, and to me I also felt that the details were actually quite accurate. In the year 1941, the Americans really had a look of concern after they bombed the Japanese, fearing that the Japanese would retaliate by bombing the United States, particularly California, as the city of Los Angeles was abuzz with fear, paranoia, and it showed America at war with a different perspective than in their normal emotional stances. And I'm not trying to piss off anyone, but the Americans have always made us think that they were brave, fearless, and practically laughed in the face of danger. But here, what we see here in the movie 1941 is a refreshing look that proves otherwise, and that American soldiers were no different from other nations as fear, insecurity, and uncertainty was manifesting through the minds of millions of Americans. Japan actually did get their revenge, but it was in Washington State, and it didn't really last long. For fear of maybe retribution, Americans actually tried to self-proclaim protect themselves by setting up concentration camps towards Asian Americans. And yet Spielberg had succeeded to take the time to actually find reason to laugh at all the hysteria. No wonder why Wayne and Heston refused to participate in the movie. Sadly for them, this movie was absolutely hilarious in a slapstick manner that works on many levels. Sure, the plot was quite narrow-thin, just a plethora of gags and spoofs to carry the film in its 2-hour, 26-minute duration. Sure, it may not be for everyone, but before you make any judgments, go see it for yourself, even if it is just for a rental. The DVD extras actually feature some very, very special tidbits, but my very favorite feature is the making of and the cast interviews. They really, really do go into detail here. There's a cornucopia of details that relates to the scenes featured and the scenes they attempted that didn't quite work well, including the torpedo coming after civilians. Mr. Spielberg actually takes the time to showcase some of his home movies that he filmed as an inspiration for the making of the project. And the cast is definitely filled with top-notch comical actors, including the late John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Slim Pickens, among others. Not to mention the less comical performers like Christopher Lee, Robert Stack, Toshiro Miyafune, and Treat Williams. If there was any weakness, it was probably through the DVD extras, including the interface, which at times can be quite troubling. For instance, like when selecting a scene, it shows sets of 6 per scene, but unlike other DVDs in this movie, the choices were not featured unless you press enter. Unless you remember the scene options, you will likely be lost. It's unorthodox that they refrained from automatic switching like on every other DVD. It may not be anamorphic, but it's still in letterbox. But that's only a minor quibble. So if you're into comedy, especially the crazy antics of John Belushi and company, as it spoofs a weak point in American history during World War II, and if you're all good sports about a comedy poking fun at a time when there was really little to laugh about, then you might actually enjoy this movie. Even if this movie is not your cup of tea, at least check it out before you cast the first stone. So if I was to give this movie a rating out of 10, I would definitely give it a 7.5. It's very, very entertaining. Sure, the plot is very narrow, but at least it gives an original and a refreshing look at a time when American soldiers in World War II were at their most vulnerable. And like I said, I'm not out to offend anyone. I don't want to make anybody angry. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in particular, but I'm just reflecting at a time that American soldiers and were also suffering from the effects of war, but just in a different light, not as patriotic, fearless, and brave. Now, I'm not saying that anybody here is a coward, not in the long shot. But you know, the fear in World War II affected every country, including America. And that's really all that I'm pointing out. If anybody feels offended in any way, I sincerely apologize. So I guess this kind of ends my writer review. Thank you so much for listening in. Subscribe to my page. You can write comments if you like. Remember, be kind, be courteous, and I will be back soon with another writer review. Until next time, this is Eric Corrupt Writer saying so long, everyone. keep watching those movies. Goodbye.